Hello and welcome. This is part 5 of the Massachusetts versus Karen Reed Daubert hearing. The defense attorney, Robert Alessi, is finishing up questioning Dr. Marie Russell, and then the prosecution will be taking over.
Right at the time that picture was taken could be different than when the injury was inflicted.
Does the ruler help you at all in this photograph or any of the photographs we've seen in determining whether or not a given defect is from a dog?
Yes, they do.
How?
Because there are several of them. The configuration of the collection of the defects are in a certain area, and actually it's an area that corresponds with the area of the decedent's arm where the injuries were. And they're significantly smaller than, for instance, what you would see in a gunshot wound.
Your Honor, may I please have published 24?
Sure.
Thank you. You recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 24, Dr. Russell?
Yes.
What is it?
That's another defect in the right arm, closer to the sleeve or cuff of the arm of that particular hoodie, and it's labeled number 8.
What assessment, if any, did you make of what's depicted in this exhibit?
It's consistent with a dog bite, and fabrics are pointed outward.
Why is it consistent with a dog bite?
Again, the size.
I'm sorry.
The size.
The size of the hole?
The size of the hole, yes. Taken in conjunction with all of the rest of the holes.
All the rest of the holes in the other photos?
Yes, that we just discussed, yes.
Your Honor, may I have published 25?
Yes.
Thank you. You recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 25?
Yes.
What is it?
So it's again the right arm of the hoodie. It's down by the edge of the sleeve towards the wrist area would be. And it shows 2 defects, one of which is labeled 9. The other one I don't know the number, but it's labeled.
What conclusions, if any, did you reach with regard to what's depicted in Exhibit 25?
Dog bites.
How did you reach that conclusion?
Again, those holes are consistent with the other holes on the sleeve. They are present on the right side of the body. Now I know, and one has to keep in mind that when someone is wearing an article of clothing, as the person moves, the clothing can move in relation to the arm. So even though that is the cuff area, we don't know exactly where it was on the arm when the bites were being inflicted.
That's really good to point out because we don't know if John O'Keefe had his sleeves rolled up. You know, he could have had his sleeves up to his elbows like some people do, like when they're wearing long sleeves, you know. So it's interesting to think about, were his sleeves down by his wrists, or did he have his sleeves rolled up by his elbows? Interesting to think about. But Dr. Marie Russell is consistent with her objection, like her objective observation of the articles of clothing and comparing them to John O'Keefe's wounds.
I don't know if that made sense.
It did to me.
Okay.
Your Honor, may I have published 26?
Sure.
Thank you. Dr. Russell, do you recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 26?
That appears to be a similar photograph to the prior one, just the exposure appears to be a little different to me.
Which arm of the hoodie is depicted in Exhibit 26.
Right on.
And if you have been paying attention so far during this Daubert hearing, and you've noticed how many times attorney Robert Alessi asks Dr. Russell which arm is displayed in this exhibit, and consistently her answer is the right arm. You might be questioning why. Why do we have to keep saying it's the right arm? Why does attorney Alessi keep asking which arm this is? We all know by now this is the right arm. But it's attorney Alessi being thorough, and he's showing all of us, he's showing everyone in the courtroom and everyone watching this, that Dr. Marie Russell is present, she's alert, and she knows which arm is being displayed. So it can't be argued later that she didn't even know which arm was shown in the exhibit. So it's maintaining a clear, concise record of her observations.
26, please.
Yes.
Thank you. What assessment, if any, did you make of what's depicted in Exhibit 26?
That these were inflicted by the dog.
How did you make that assessment or conclusion?
Because they're similar in general appearance to the other ones on that right sleeve, and they're small in size.
And this is the right arm of the hoodie.
Correct.
Your Honor, may I have published 27?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Russell, do you recognize what is depicted in Exhibit 27?
Yes, I've seen that before.
What is it?
It's a defect in the chest area of the front of the hoodie.
What assessment, if any, did you make of the source and nature of what's depicted in that exhibit?
Yes, let me describe it a little bit better. It's labeled with number 10.
Yes.
And adjacent to it, of course, there's this big defect. Which,
Can you use I'm sorry, Your Honor, may the witness use the laser pointer when she
yes.
says this?
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. So this is the defect in question, labeled number 10. But adjacent to it, there's this huge defect right over here. It's going this way. And as being an emergency room physician, I recognize that as that large defect as having been caused by the emergency room personnel when they opened up the sweatshirt to have access to Mr. O'Keefe.
So, are you saying that there's two different sources of what's depicted in this exhibit, or is it just all from one source?
I believe that they're two different sources.
Can you, with your laser, identify each one and what your conclusion is as regards to the nature of each one?
So this large one here, I believe, is from the scissor wound, the trauma scissors.
And trauma scissors of a medical professional in the emergency department?
Yes, or it could have been EMS personnel also. That's
Understood.
another possibility.
Please proceed to the next.
Yes, but then this other defect is different, and it's separated. There's actually solid tissue, fabric between the two defects. This is separate, and it appears to have a little bit of a tail type configuration. So this could have been inflicted by the dog.
You say could.
Mm-hmm.
Is it could or is it consistent with infliction by a dog?
It is consistent with, however, there were no chest.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
There's a competing noise out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to see if it was going to die down. Thank you.
There were no chest wounds caused by a dog in that area. So it could have been that the fabric was loose, and as the victim was pulling away from the dog's teeth caught it, but he didn't make contact, or didn't make contact with the skin. So I can't say for sure that this is a dog bite.
Right. So
A dog.
That's really good. Again, it's demonstrating that Dr. Marie Russell is discerning between what she considers holes or tears in the fabric caused by a dog, and those which she cannot explain. And this is one of the few things she's not willing to hang her hat on. She's not willing to explain with certainty what this is or how it got there.
Dog related tear.
So, is it correct to say it's inconclusive whether this is from a dog, or is there no conclusion to be reached as to whether it's from a dog?
I don't know the difference.
Okay. I believe your answer is sufficient for the record. Thank you, Dr. Russell. If, Your Honor, we could please have published Exhibit 28.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 28?
I've seen this image before, yes.
What is it?
It's the front part of the hoodie, and there are two large defects. The one that's closer to the top of the image appears to be similar to one that would be made with trauma seizures by emergency personnel. The one that is below that's labeled number 11, I can't...
Stop your laser, because I just want to make sure I understand where you're pointing. You said below that. Can you just hold your laser as to where that is?
On the laser, you want to see what I'm...
If you could point, you said right below
this
that.
one, this, yeah. So this is, the top one is what I believe is caused by trauma seizures.
Yes.
Below that in this image, and labeled number 11,
Yes.
is a very irregular defect. That's this one right here. And it's labeled number 11. I can't say for sure what caused it.
What causes you to use the parlance irregular? What is irregular about it?
Well, irregular means that it's not a straight line. It's not a nice circle. It doesn't have a nice edge to it.
Are you able to reach any conclusions with regard to what is depicted in Exhibit 29?
No.
Your Honor, if I could have published Exhibit 30.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think you were referring to 28.
Yeah, I think that last one was
I'm
28,
sorry.
27 before then. I just thought I might have missed it. So,
No, you didn't. I did. That was my error. Thank
so
you, Mr.
29.
Brennan. I believe we are now on 29. It appears 29 is up, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's still sad to look at these clothing, the fabric, and to see the stains on it, what are likely blood stains, especially if you viewed the CCTV video from the Waterfall Bar and Grill, which is the last video footage of John O'Keefe alive, at least in full form. And in that CCTV footage, we can clearly see John O'Keefe wearing this long sleeve hoodie, and he doesn't appear to have any stains on it. It looks clean, and now it's filled with holes and stains, and again, what are likely John O'Keefe's blood stains. So, it gives perspective, the tragedy of all this, and that mere moments before this happened to John O'Keefe, the shirt was clean, the shirt was intact, and he was having a good time. John O'Keefe was a whole person, alive and breathing and having a good time with his girlfriend, Karen Reed. And now he's not with us anymore. And what we have of his remains are tethered clothing with bloodstains and all kinds of other things going on. that, again, we may never be able to explain because, again, no one inside of 34 Fairview that night told us the truth. Every single person in that house lied to us.
Dr. Russell, do you recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 29?
Yes.
What is it?
It's an area of the front of the hoodie that is in the front, the anterior of the hoodie. And has two labels showing two different defects, 12 and 13.
What assessment, if any, did you make with regard to what is associated with number 12?
Number 12 is a long defect, and by itself, I can't make any assessment.
I'm sorry, please continue.
Yeah, but next to, adjacent to number 13, which is another defect that's much smaller, the two of them in combination are suggestive of teeth marks.
Can you put your laser up and down? You said two. I think I understand.
Yeah, so
there's one.
Yes.
And then where's two?
Right here.
Understood. And why do you believe it's suggestive of dog tooth marks?
Well, dogs have multiple teeth. And so multiple teeth can cause individual defects. And the fact that there are two defects in close proximity to one another and oriented in the same direction makes me consider that it's possible that they were caused by teeth.
And are you able to determine a more specific location of where this is on the hoodie?
I might be wrong. I think it's the... No, I can't really say for sure because I don't know if this picture is upside down or not.
So the nature of the picture does not allow you to make a conclusion that you're comfortable with regard to the location on the hoodie?
Yeah, individually.
Objection sustained to the form.
Understood. Are you able to reach a conclusion with regard to what part of the hoodie is depicted with reference to the 12 and 13 on this exhibit?
Not from this image only.
In combination with any other image, are you able to reach a conclusion as to what part of the hoodie is depicted by 12 and 13?
If we went back to the overall picture, I could try.
Do we need this answer from her?
We do not, Your Honor. I was actually going to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I have published 30?
Yes.
Thank you. You recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 30?
So this is a close-up of the previous picture of the anterior portion of the hoodie.
Previous picture meaning Exhibit 29, the one we were just looking at?
Yes.
Thank you. And how can you determine that from what's depicted in Exhibit 30?
Well, because there are two defects that are close together. They're labeled 12 and 13. And unfortunately, the ruler covers one part of one of them, but still I can see enough of it.
And what's your assessment of what's depicted in Exhibit 30?
They are consistent with being caused by a dog teeth, by dog teeth.
How do you reach that conclusion?
Well, because they're oriented in the same direction and they're close by.
What do you mean by they're oriented, with the laser, what do you mean they're oriented in the same direction?
So they're going, this 12 is going up and down in this image, and so is 13.
And why is that notable to you in reaching your conclusion?
Well, the teeth, causing a defect, would tear along the same plane, they'd make tears in parallel. That's same direction.
Any other assessment you make of what's depicted in 30?
No.
Your Honor, may we publish 32?
Okay.
Do you recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 32?
Now, if you're just listening, I'd like you to look at this photo because it's compelling evidence right here, and it was not shown much previously. So I believe this is a dog bite just from looking at it. And I believe Dr. Marie Russell will testify as to the same.
Yes.
What is it?
This is a wound, a partially healed avulsion wound of a person's hand between the thumb and the index finger.
Do you have knowledge of whose hand that is that's depicted in Exhibit 32?
I do.
What is the person, do you know the name of the person's hand who's depicted in Exhibit 32?
I think it was Lisa, not Lisa.
Do you have knowledge of how that wound occurred?
Yes,
How do you have knowledge of how that wound occurred?
because I read a report regarding a dog bite incident.
And what did you learn from reading that report about what is depicted in Exhibit 32?
That a dog named Chloe attacked another dog, and in the process, the woman whose hand that was bitten by Chloe.
Can you
Really, really, really good. Really good that the defense brought this on. And I'm surprised that the prosecution allowed them to. By now, if you didn't know, all of these exhibits were agreed upon before the Daubert hearing began. So if you didn't know that, the prosecution and the defense would have had to agree on all of these exhibits. And I am surprised that the prosecution agreed to have this exhibit submitted for evidence on behalf of the defense. Really good.
describe what is shown with regard to Exhibit 32 in relation to dog Chloe?
Well, this is a partially healed avulsion laceration.
From your experience, have you seen these types of avulsion wounds either as an emergency room physician and or a pathologist in your 30 plus years of practice?
I've seen them not infrequently in the emergency room.
Did you say not infrequently?
That's correct.
Is that another way of saying you've seen it frequently?
I've seen them many times. In the
I get it. I do the same thing. Yep. I overcomplicate language sometimes too. It just happens.
emergency department.
Is this a wound of someone who is antemortem or postmortem, or are they alive?
This person's alive. This is an ante-mortem wound, and it shows many, many days of healing, maybe even much longer.
How can you tell that what is depicted in that exhibit, that wound, has, as you described it, many, many days of healing?
That might take years of medical school to explain, but there's the edges. First of all, it's not bleeding. Second of all, there's what we call granulation tissue in the wound.
What is that granulation?
Well, that's tissue that the body builds up. Oh, yes. So first of all, this most likely did not appear like this when it was first inflicted. What happened was the flap, there's a flap here, that skin was over here to begin with. But then what happened is that it became detached, and that's called an avulsion wound, where a piece of skin is detached, but not completely. So it still remained intact down here. Now, that area in between, so that, of course, skin contracts as it dries, and that area between here and there heals. The body heals itself, tries to close itself off. So it builds up this, what is called granulation tissue, which is basically new tissue to cover the defects so that infection doesn't set in. And that takes weeks, usually.
What is it that takes weeks?
That healing, that extent of healing.
And so is that wound the same as when it was initially made, or is it different from when the wound was initially made?
Very different.
How is it very different from when the wound was initially made?
When it was initially made, this edge here would be sharper. Right now you can see there's rolled up tissue here, what appears to be rolled, and that's because it's healing. So this would have been sharper, and the tissue down in here would have been bleeding, or it would have had a crust if the bleeding dried.
Are you able, from this Exhibit 30, to give a range of when this wound was first made in terms of days or weeks?
Well, I think I did already. I think that it was at least weeks.
At least weeks? Alrighty, thank you. We can remove that. Thank you very much. Dr. Russell, today you have given various assessments and opinions. Have those assessments and opinions been based upon, among other things, your 30-plus years as an emergency medicine physician?
Yes.
And with regard to the same assessments and opinions, have those been based on your 30-plus years as a forensic pathologist?
Yes.
What I want to now move to, and I'm almost at the conclusion of my questioning to this point, do you recall testifying previously in the first trial with regard to rendering an opinion on whether the source of the wounds in Mr. O'Keefe's arm were caused by a dog or a large animal?
Yes.
And do you recall what your answer generally was in respect to a question of were those wounds consistent with a dog or animal bite?
Yes.
And do you recall what your answer was?
Generally, yes.
And generally, what was your answer to the question of whether the wounds were consistent with a dog or large animal?
Your Honor, may there be a reference with prior testimony? I have no idea what specifically we're referring to as far as the past.
Transcript, date, where it is.
Happy to give it, Your Honor. May I have a moment again?
Yes.
Well, we have a moment. I'd also add, people understand that this is impeachment, inappropriate attempt at prior consistent statement. This would be some foundation.
So for what purpose are you offering this?
Your Honor, I would first like to respond to this preliminary hearing where, as you know, the rules of evidence are not strictly. The purpose I'm giving this, Your Honor, is not for impeachment. It's exactly for her to state, and if you Honor would allow me to connect up with the questions, it will allow her to state with regard to her testimony today, whether or not the opinion she has formed previously is the same opinion as she has formed? Is it the same?
Okay, so why don't you ask her what her opinion is today?
Yes.
And then just ask her whether it was any different than before. You can pull the page up if you have it. I have it here, I think, so just...
You don't need it?
So do you need it, Mr. Brennan?
Please.
I'm happy to provide it. Mr. Brennan, it is the June 21st transcript.
I've noticed too, like the energy of Robert Alessi and the energy of Hank Brennan. While I view Robert Alessi as someone who's objective and matter of fact, and he runs a tight ship in that he's rather thorough, probably more thorough than any other attorney on the defense team. And Hank Brennan is obviously in the prosecution, and it's almost like Adam Lally 2.0, but worse in that Hank Brennan is robotic. I've described him as robotic, but somehow Hank Brennan and Robert Alessi sort of meet in the middle in that they kind of share a similar energy of this steady sort of monotone voice. They just seem similar to me in nature. Although again, Robert Alessi seems more pleasant, more welcoming. He has a warmth to him. And Hank Brennan is like fighting dirty, much like Adam Lally. So I don't know. I've thought about this over the last few videos, and how I see it is as if when the prosecution brought on Hank Brennan, the defense team responded by bringing on Robert Alessi, and it's it's almost like it's a fair match between these two attorneys. They are similar while they are also very different, but in the way they are similar, it's as if they have a chemistry, and you can see that in how Robert Alessi maintains this level of respectfulness toward Hank Brennan, to the extent that Hank Brennan is not as combative against Robert Alessi.
Let me just double check on that.
Sure, I think co-counsel should be able to find it for you. So why don't you come on in and just ask her the question, and I'm sure Ms. Giannetti can pull it up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Apologize to the court for that. Dr. Russell, are the opinions that you have given today consistent or inconsistent with the opinions? Well, let me ask it this way. For the opinions that you have given today, how do they compare to the opinions that you've given previously?
I'm not oblivious to the attempt here. I object. It's not the proper form of questioning to go back. try to explain potentially inconsistent statements in today's testimony.
Is that what you're attempting to do?
No, Your Honor, it's not what I'm.
All right, so the opinions today, and I guess it's a matter of argument, right? I can be told with the previous, it was attached to the motion that's before me today, the transcript was attached. I can see what her previous opinion is, and then I ultimately decide whether it's consistent or not. Right?
I agree with that, Your Honor.
Okay, so if you've got a site, I'm happy to look at the page to see if I might be able to figure out where you're going, or you can come to sidebar.
Can I come to sidebar?
Sure.
With it, Your Honor?
I will skip ahead, but before I do, I just want to commend Robert Alessi for being thorough. Again, to some people, he might come off as redundant, but to me, he's running a tight ship. He doesn't want to leave anything unturned. It's really good.
If I may have a moment, Your Honor, I'm going to see if I have in fact concluded the questions for this moment.
Sure.
Thank you.
Jim, give me those.
Your Honor, if I may have a point of order question with the court?
I'm sorry?
May I have a point of order question with the
Sure.
court? Thank you. As you know, she has prepared a report, and different jurisdictions do it different in Daubert hearings. Is that something you believe needs to be marked? I was just going to do a brief foundation that she has in fact prepared one. Sometimes courts report.
Is there an objection to me receiving a report and evidence?
If the court would find it helpful, I won't object, but I do not believe it's admissible and relevant. But if the court would like to reference it, I won't object.
So why don't we mark it for identification, and then the two of you talk about it. We'll see how the hearing goes, and if there is, I may well want to see it, but we'll mark it for identification, Mr. Alessi, and then later see if it comes in, okay? We're clearly, I think, going to have to come back another day, so we'll have some time.
Yes. A for identification.
That's what I want. Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
Thank you. There, Jim, thank you. Jim.
Do you need it? Yeah. Sure.
Yes.
I am handing you, Dr. Russell, what has been marked as Exhibit A for identification. Unlike the other exhibits, it is not evidence. Not yet. Do you recognize Exhibit A?
Yes,
What is it?
it's a report that I wrote.
How many pages is that report?
Sorry.
Are they not numbered?
They are numbered. I just, the CV is attached as well. Okay, it's 11 pages.
Dr. Russell, did you prepare that report?
I did.
Your Honor, I just would like, if I could please note for the record that that report was filed and it's on file with the court as part of our opposition motion. I know Your Honor knows it, but I would just like to note that for the record.
Sure.
Thank you. At this particular point, Your Honor, I have no questions, and I appreciate the court's patience and gracious allocation of time for me to go through these questions with the witness.
All right. Thank you very much. So I intend for us to go until 4 o'clock today, so we'll see how far you get, Mr. Brennan, okay?
Thank you. May I?
Please.
I will make a part 6 for the prosecution's portion of the Daubert hearing. Thank you for watching.